live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. It is a lovely, lovely Thursday. We can't get into everything that we need to attend to until the tubes connect themselves. Of course, on the Twitter, on the locals, on the Rumble, on the YouTube, we got the lights back to normal. And I think we're working, so that's tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about Donald Trump pleading not guilty. So he filled out the paperwork for this. Of course, we're talking about Big Fani Willis's case out in Georgia. And there's something interesting going on here that we'll spend some time on today, which is this speedy trial issue. We know that a couple people have filed a motion for speedy trial, Kenneth Chesebro and Sidney Powell, and others are expected to do the same. But that really compresses what the government has to do. It makes them have to accelerate a bunch of stuff and get things in order if trial's going to be happening in October. That's going to be here like lickety-split. And so Big Fani filed a very interesting motion. She's kind of asking the court to just advise the defense about some of their rights and make sure that the defense knows that if they really want a speedy trial, if they really want to go down this road, they're going to have to give up a bunch of rights, like discovery and disclosure rules and witnesses and blah, blah, blah. And so she's kind of like, uh-oh, I better make sure the judge knows that if they ask for these things, I can't give it to them. And on the left, a big part of the narrative has been that they're ready to go. Donald Trump keeps wanting to delay this. Well, this feels to me like Big Fani Willis is hitting the panic button a little bit. So we'll go through that. Donald Trump, of course, pleads not guilty. That happened today, or he filled out the paperwork to plead not guilty, waiving his appearance at the formal arraignment. So we'll go through that. We've got reaction from Harris Floyd. We know that this guy was held in custody in Atlanta and in Fulton County. He has now been released on bond, and he showed up on War Room with Steve Bannon and explained that, yeah, he thinks Big Fani singled him out. And obviously, the leader of Black Voices for Trump gets singled out and persecuted by Big Fani Willis. We also have a clip from this guy, Representative Loudermilk. He is on the archival portion of Congress. He's on the committee that is supposed to be responsible for the records. And he says that the January 6th committee failed to preserve a bunch of materials. And of course, this is relevant to Trump's January 6th case. There's a lot of spillover between the January 6th case and the Georgia case. And so all of that is stuff that we will get into, including reading that motion from Big Fani, because some people are saying that the case law that she's citing is terrible. Techno Fog, Cernovich, both lawyers, both on Twitter, they were doing a little bit of a deep dive on this today. And they said she's citing cases that don't even make her argument. So we'll see what they had to say about it. Of course, we know that there are 19 co-defendants, so they're all going to be responding to this. And we'll see what they say about their rights. All of that with the Big Fani segment coming up. Then we've also got over on from the DOJ. We've been following this for a little bit of time, but Jim Jordan from the Judiciary Committee, he sent a bunch of subpoenas. I think we talked about this last week. And to the FBI, they sent some other subpoenas to the IRS. They're saying, hey, we want records from your investigation with David Weiss into Hunter Biden and all of those things. But Merrick Garland has responded, and he's rejecting that. So he's rejecting Congress. He's saying, sorry, your subpoenas have no power here. And we'll see what the Congress does about that. We've got a clip here from James Comer saying that there seems to be this growing consensus that there is a need for an impeachment inquiry. And we're all sitting here like, growing consensus, huh? Yeah, that's exactly what we think here as well. So we'll see if they get into that. Then we'll have our final segment, which is one where we'll learn about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden flying around on VP jet, whatever it's called. And so 15 countries is when they were palling around together on Air Force Two or whatever. And so James Comer And Byron Donald sent a letter over from the congressional committees to the National Archives saying, we want records of this stuff. Why was Hunty flying around with Daddy VP to 15 countries when he was supposedly in and out of crack rehab centers and so on and so forth? And so we'll go through it. We've also got news that the Department of Justice, the same corrupt people who have been covering up for Hunter Biden, also apparently contacted Gary Shapley, the IRS whistleblower, before he was set to testify in front of Congress. So the Department of Justice doesn't want somebody who was part of the investigation into Hunter Biden testing in front of Congress. So they try to interfere and intervene and deviate Gary Shapley from whatever he's was about to say. Of course, what he said was highly consequential and caused a bunch of changes within the Department of Justice itself. We've also got a final clip from Byron Donalds that we'll get to, and he's promising, man, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Hang tight, America. And I believe him. So we're going to get through a lot, my friends. And of course, we are so grateful that you are here and with us today. This morning, we had a very fun members stream, and we had a lot of fun at watchingthewatchers.locals.com talking about the day's affairs and about the interview yesterday. And we had a really, really great interview. If you missed that, Garrett Ziegler over from Marco Polo came by, and he helped us test out our new interview setup. We had some fun. But if you haven't checked out this book yet, basically, you could commit a felony with this. I mean, this is how heavy this is. Like, Hunter could hit somebody in the head and be charged with another felony, in addition to the 400 plus other crimes that have been chronicled in here. And so we learned yesterday that Garrett Ziegler and Marco Polo, they're being sued by Hunter Biden acolytes, some of the worst people ever, suing them. And they could use your support. One way you can do that is to buy a copy of this, right? You can go over to marcopolousa.org, grab a copy of this. They'll ship it over to you. It is great, right? And you can't forget this. Nobody can really forget it. Once you flip through it, you'll see incredible detail went into it. They are doing amazing work. And so we want to make sure we support them. We're going to be rocking a copy of this puppy up here for a little while, just to keep this front and center, because they're doing good work. They're under some serious scrutiny from the Biden lawfare people. A lot of this happening here. And so give them support. If you haven't seen it yet, make sure you follow that interview, follow Garrett Ziegler, follow the people at Marco Polo. They're doing incredible work. So shout out to those guys. Also, today we had a very troubling set of sentencings with the Proud Boys. And the Proud Boys got sentenced today, two of them, Biggs and Real, to 17 years and 15 years. And these are some of the most horrendous sentencings that you'll ever see in this country. What we are witnessing now are people who are at the mercy, essentially, of a weaponized Department of Justice. They were asking for 30 years in some of these situations. It's abhorrent to even think about it, but it's happening right now. And so I want to make sure that we keep them in our thoughts and their families in our thoughts, because they are in a group of people that are the most disfavored defendant class in this entire country. They are the victims of political prosecution. I'm not saying that they're totally innocent or that they should be completely exonerated, but the penalties that they are facing are so outside of the ordinary course of justice that it is not justice. And I feel like they are being railroaded just to be made the scapegoat for a political party's bloodlust and bloodthirst. And it's a disgusting thing. And so that's happening right now. There are show trials taking place. And if you've been following it, we know that Judge Kelly went through a 3-hour soliloquy, and he sort of, was just toting the party line that we're very familiar with. And so there's some very good people doing amazing reporting on this. Julie Kelly has been all over this. But as we, go on with this, they will, of course, have their appeals, and I'm hopeful, will be a change in sanity in our elected leadership, and that there is an opportunity for a pardon and for some serious recourse to make sure this never happens again. But it's a bit of a troubling day. And so I just wanted to pause on that and make sure we recognize them and their families. There are a lot of people on their side of the aisle who are gleeful today and just doing cartwheels and very excited about this, thrilled that they're, getting their pound of flesh for whatever reason. And so we'll keep our energies focused on the positive side of what is happening out there. And I do believe that these men who are the victim of this political persecution will be vindicated in the future. And so we'll keep thinking of them and praying for them as we go on. Now, I also, before we jump into everything today, want to make sure that we remind you about our website, robertgovea.com, where you can read all of these reports and get a copy of this mind map. Everything that we're about to go through today is available, robertgovea.com. And before we jump into the meat and potatoes on the show, we got to be properly healthy and fortified. And one way we can do that is with our friends over at Field of Greens, because we would all like to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds. But how sick are you of all the ads for the weight loss pills, the fad diets? You know, we've all been there. We've all done that. And they just don't work. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But look, I know fruit, vegetables, not a fan. Who's got time to prepare that every day? I don't. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, woo, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to enter code Robert when you check out so you can save 15% off your first order. And let's not forget, the vegetables want to be eaten. That's why they're here. They're delicious and they're nutritious. fieldofgreens.com. And we also, as a reminder, we have a new sponsor, aura.com/Robert Goveas, where you can go if you're interested in internet security. And we're going to have a short plug for those here today. But because this is a live stream, we have live stream privilege. And we're just going to fast forward right over that. So if you're wondering what that's all about. All right. So let's get into it, my friends. Starting with Big Fani, the biggest Fani in Georgia. Big Fani Willis, Trump prosecutor from Georgia, starting to hit the panic button a little bit. Remember, she came out very hot, said, hey, we're ready to go. We want trial. Donald Trump's an insurrectionist. We're going to take him out along with 18 co-defendants, and we're going to go quickly. Well, something happened. Defendants like Kenneth Chesebro and Sidney Powell filed motions for a speedy trial. They said, hey, we're ready to rock and roll. And so Fani sent something over to them and says, hey, judge, make sure that they know what they're doing. If they request a speedy trial, then that means they're going to give up a bunch of rights. But the question is, who is Big Fani to say that they're actually giving up those rights? And is the case law she's using actually legitimate? Lawyers say no. But before we go into all of that, Donald Trump did submit another filing in Georgia, entering his plea of not guilty and waiving his appearance at arraignment. So you can see very short filing here, just a couple of pages. But in normal felony cases, the defendant has to appear. But Trump, of course, is not being treated like all the other co-defendants, even though they say this. All the other January 6th defendants are other defendants. And so he's not going to be there because they're not holding him to the equal set of the laws, even though they say they are, because they keep telling us that he's an insurrectionist. So my point is, their words don't match the reality, right? They're saying that Trump is this monster, but then he's allowed to waive his appearance at an arraignment. Interesting. So Fulton County, Georgia versus Donald Trump. This is Trump's entry of a plea of not guilty. He says, I, President Donald Trump, hereby acknowledge that I am the defendant named above, and I have received a copy of the indictment in this case. I understand I have the right to appear personally at my arraignment and that I have the right to have my indictment read to me in open court. I have discussed the charges in the indictment and this waiver of appearance with my attorney, Stephen H. Sado, and I fully understand the nature of the offenses of the charges and my right to appear at my arraignment. Understanding my rights, I do hereby freely and voluntarily waive my right to be present at my arraignment on the indictment and my right to have it read to me in open court. As evidenced by my signature below, I do hereby waive formal arraignment and enter my plea of not guilty to the indictment in this case. And so, a lot of people on the left were screeching about this all over Twitter. They're like, wait a minute, he's not going to have to show up there. We wanted to see him in court again and blah, blah, blah. They're also hyperventilating on Twitter, on the X about this. Sorry, Elon, don't ban me. About him using this word called president. They're saying, shouldn't he say former president? Isn't this falsifying a legal document? How dare he be able to say I president when he's not president? Maybe Fani should charge him with another crime or something, blah, blah, blah. All right, so this is all standard stuff. Now, this is what you would see happen at an arraignment. Very, very basic. Usually, we've covered, 3 of them now with Donald Trump. And those have all been very quick in and out. Now, what's curious about this is my point. I know I'm sort of being facetious about the whole thing, but other people who are charged with felonies, generally speaking, got to go to court. And Trump, according to Big Fani, led a conspiracy to overtake the entire country. But their prosecutors are allowing him to negotiate a deal to waive his presence. Would they do that for every other defendant? I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't practice law in Georgia, but that seems a little curious to me. Most people charged with major felonies, they got to go to court. So what's happening here? I'm very curious. So it is a little bit of what feels like a joke and a scam. And of course, we're going to see Big Fani hit the panic button. One way, though, we can avoid scams is with our friends over at Aura. Big Fani is hitting the panic button, and we can see this in a new filing. In fact, some of the cases that she cites may not even be actually accurate. This is according to two lawyers, Mike Cernovich over on Twitter and Techno Fog, and you're very familiar with him here on this channel. But this is what Fani submitted. We know that there were a couple different speedy trial filings, and one of them came from Sidney Powell. Another one came from Kenneth Chesebro, and they said, we're ready to rock and roll. We want our trial scheduled like now. October sounds great to us. And one of the reasons that that might happen is because they know that the government's not ready. And one of the analogies that we regularly use here are DUI cases. When I was representing clients, I did a lot of those. And sometimes you would want to schedule your trial quickly because you knew that the government's blood results weren't going to come back quick enough. And if they couldn't get them back quick enough, well, they don't have a pretty key piece of evidence that they're going to need to make their case. And so you want to keep the pressure on the government because the burden of proof is on them. So in this case, state of Georgia versus Donald Trump. And notice that she's not just sending this to the only people who filed the right for a speedy trial. Sidney Powell filed that, sure. We've also got Kenneth Chesebro who filed that, yeah. But these other people didn't. But this is for all of them, and this is coming from Big Fani. And listen to her. She says, a motion for the court to advise the defendants of the effects of the speedy trial demand, which is their right, they're totally entitled to do that, upon evidentiary and procedural rights and a brief in support. So you're like, wait a minute, what? So Big Fani, and just to be clear about this, it's this is because she is the literal district attorney of Fulton County. Okay, she's a very prestigious person, the biggest person in Fulton County. Big Fani is why we call her that. So Big Fani is here, almost asking the court to clarify something, and we're sitting here reading this, going, well, what do you clarify? What do you mean evidentiary and procedural rights? Like there's a different set of rules that apply if you request a speedy trial? Suddenly everything changes, and now the defense, what? If you go too fast, you don't get discovery, or maybe like Judge Chutkan, she says you can read 12 million pages every single day because you're like a speed reader or something. What's going on here? She says, okay, here, hey, Judge, comes now the state of Georgia by through Big Fani and requests that the honorable court advise the defendants of the effects of their speedy trial demands. Like, hey, Judge, just let them know that this is going to change the game. And it's almost like, why are you asking them to advise them? Do you want them to retract those, or do you plan to present a different case? Strange. Upon evidentiary and procedural rights, and provides the following in support. She says, okay. Big Fani says, on August 14th, the Fulton County grand jury indicted 19 co-defendants, 41 charges, Georgia, RICO, blah, blah, blah. The statutory speedy trial demands filed thus far in this case, and any which may be filed hereforth, will affect various issues related to discovery and procedure. Okay, so she's saying, okay, so they're going to exercise this right, so we're going to change a bunch of stuff. And we're going, all right, well, what are you going to be changing here? Let's see. Accordingly, the state presents the following argument and citation of authority in order to assist the court in resolving any dispute which may arise with regard to those matters. Okay, so it's like, why are you objecting right now? What are you objecting? Nothing's even come up yet. Nobody's even complaining about anything yet. They just asked for a speedy trial. And now Georgia's like, Fani's like, oh, crap, they're asking for a speedy trial? Well, what about this? What about this? What about that? Do we have this? Do we have this in order? Do we have everything in order? So we better file something so the judge knows that they can't go down this line of argument. And they're filing this, preemptively, in other words. The procedure posture of this case has been dictated by the defendant's speedy trial demands. So it's like, okay, which they're allowed to do. She says, as will be delineated under Georgia law, the defendants, in this case, let's say Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesebro, their decision to file a speedy trial demand limits certain of their options in this case, all right? So now they're limited. So by exercising a right that is afforded to them under the Constitution, they are abrogating their other rights. They no longer have these other rights because they're exercising speedy demands. They say the defendants cannot now argue that they are entitled to the state's discovery responses 10 days in advance of trial. So the defense will typically say, hey, we've got to get material from you at least 10 days before trial so that we can review them and be prepared for trial, because you don't want to like drop off your stuff the day before trial. Hey, guess what? Like the DOJ is allowed to do. Hey, here's 5 Washington monuments full of paper. Here you go. 3 days before trial. So the rule says, okay, 10 days is the appropriate rule, but they say, no, the defense cannot argue that the 10-day rules apply, that they're supposed to get it within 10 days. And now I want to just pause on this because you're going to see a bunch of these cases are cited. Smith versus State, Ruff versus State, Brown versus State, Clark versus State, and Linkus versus State. And other people have been digging into this. Cernovich, Techno Fog, great individuals on Twitter to follow if you're not already doing that. But they've looked into this and they're saying these cases don't actually match what they're alleging they match or what they say. They say defendants, this is Fani, cannot now argue that they are entitled to notice of the state's similar transaction evidence 10 days in advance. So basically the 10-day limitation no longer applies to discovery responses, to transaction evidence. They're limited to transaction evidence. They say, guess what? The defense are now precluded from calling witnesses whose statements were not provided to the state at least 10 days in advance of trial. So in other words, the government can disclose stuff, it sounds like, within the 10 days. So the defense can't say you broke the 10-day rule, but the government can invoke the 10-day rule against the defense. The defense is now precluded from calling any witnesses that the state didn't know about in 10 days. So the state can break the 10-day rule, but the defense cannot. And the defense cannot now complain that they receive less than 7 days notice of the trial date in this case, right? Now they're citing all of this. So all of the other time limitations are now broken. Why? Because the defense is asking for a speedy trial. Now this is very curious. That's pretty interesting. I didn't know that there was a whole set of different rules that automatically got triggered as soon as somebody invoked one of their constitutional rights. Oh, you want a speedy trial? Well, guess who's not getting any evidence then? How about that? You know what? That's not how this is supposed to work. Bizarro land. So, of course, we are going to see what the defense has to say about this, and they're going to do their due diligence, and you're going to imagine that lawyers for 19 different defendants are going to be going through this in detail with a fine-tooth comb and really digging into each one of these cases. But fortunately, we have some other very intelligent people who have done that heavy lifting for us. Techno Fog is one of them. And he's on Twitter, and he says, I'm going to ask everyone to read those cases, all right, those cases that Big Fani cited for us. None of them hold what DA Fani says that they do. Says false representation to the court makes DA Willis guilty of the same conduct that she accuses the defendants of committing. It's a violation of Georgia code to issue a false statement to the court, saying that those cases literally don't match. And we had another segment here about lawyers who are using ChatGPT, and it just created citations out of thin air for them. And we're asking ourselves, is that what happened here? Is it Fani GPT over there? They're just making up cases that sound good? So we know that this is going to be challenged. Techno says, DA Willis says they can't argue that they are entitled to notice of similar transaction evidence 10 days before trial. Like they don't get the notice, at least 10 days. Techno says, but the law requires 10 days. And the case that Fani cites does not prohibit any arguments in case the 10-day rule is violated. Okay, so she's saying the defense can't make this argument. They can't say it, but the case that she's citing doesn't actually say that. Right? Here's her point. The defense cannot now argue they're entitled to 10 days notice. Here her case says, or here's the rule about timeliness, Rule 31.1. The rule literally says, notice shall be given and filed at least 10 days before trial unless the time is shortened or lengthened by a judge. That's the rule. And then they're citing this, saying that although Rule 31.1 requires the notice be filed at least 10 days before, it authorizes the court and the exercise of the court's discretion by providing that the trial court may shorten or lengthen the time. So in other words, there were arguments about that. Okay, in other words, the defense was allowed to make the arguments. Fani says they can't make the arguments, but literally the case she cites is them arguing about it, and the rule saying that you can't argue about it because the court has discretion to lengthen or shorten it. All right, but she's saying that the defense can't invoke the 10-day rule when clearly they can. The case that she cited says they can. So it feels like she's being a little bit dishonest here. And the question is the court going to hold her accountable to it? But it's not just Techno. Cernovich, also another great follow on Twitter, of course, is saying the same thing. He said, oh man, did I copy the same link twice? I think I did. Let me see if I can grab Cernovich real fast. So he was on this as well. I copied and pasted the same link twice. Don't you hate that? All right, so let's see if he's over here. And he had some good takes on this today. We're digging. Continuing to scroll. I thought I saw it earlier today. Here's where we're getting closer. We're getting closer. Probably. Okay. Here we go. This is what he says. Okay. So Mike Cernovich over on Twitter, X, says, Willis cites Smith versus State for the claim that the defendants cannot now argue that they are entitled to the state's discovery. But that's not what the case says or is even about, right? That they're not entitled to discovery within 10 days. That's not what the case said or was even about. Here, he's actually looked up the case, says a trial court's ruling on a motion for continuance is within the sound discretion of the trial court. So the appeal was about a simple continuance. It wasn't even about basically the 10-day limitation and whether stuff needs to be precluded or whether the court can modify the time limitation. So the case is like not even on point, is what Cernovich is saying. He says at the call of the calendar, Smith, who's the person at issue in this case, who had demanded a speedy trial, said that he intended to withdraw his demand and asked for a continuance, right? So in other words, they were fighting over the 10-day rule, but then withdrew it and asked for a continuance so that they could comply with the 10 days and comply with the disclosure. So the point is we don't really know what Fani is citing or what she's referencing here. And all of the defendants are going to have a lot of fun with that when they start to dig into it. So it feels panicky. It feels like she's just trying to throw stuff out there and see if she can make it stick. And here is the rest of the motion, right? So all of these cases are now going to be verified and dug into. But she says, on August 23rd, Kenneth Chesebro opted into the discovery provisions and then filed a demand for a speedy trial. And when he demanded a speedy trial, this court set October 23rd as the date. Everybody got notice. Notwithstanding the constraints foisted upon it by defendants' speedy trial demands. Can you hear this? The constraints, that is your constitutional burden, right? This is your obligation. The defense has every right to demand a speedy trial. And if you can't comply with that, that's on you. You brought the case, you did the indictments. What constraints? They said the state, in the spirit of good faith, which again, nobody cares about. I'm so tired of hearing this from the government. We organized your files for you. We begun the process of supplying the defense with responses to its discovery requests. Great, that's your job. You're doing the prosecution. The defense has to get evidence. Good faith. Those efforts have included contacting each attorney of record for the separate defendants and requesting that each of these attorneys provide us an electronic storage device of 2 terabytes. Wow. Listen to these prosecutors patting themselves on the back. Great job, guys. You made phone calls and told the defense to get hard drives? Wow. Congratulations. And you put it in a filing. Counsel for the state has further requested that each defendant, through their lawyers, provide an electronic storage device to the county no later than September 5th, and has informed each of these attorneys that the initial batch will be served on September 15th. Okay. Trial's like, a month away, like very soon, September 15th. So this is normal. Oftentimes defense attorneys will have to bring DVDs or CD-ROMs or USB drives or whatever and exchange them. 2 terabytes is a lot of data. And if they're going to be having their trial October 23rd, that's going to be pretty quick, especially if the discovery is just being disclosed on the 17th, happening fast. So what Fani says is now the defense has waived the 10 days of notice. So this is one of the reasons why the defense files speedy trial motions, is so that the government fails to comply with all the deadlines, right? They just can't get stuff done in time. That's part of the reason. Oh, if you got to give us this, disclosure experts. If you don't have them ready at trial, you can't use them. So Fani is saying that one of the main reasons that the defense files a motion for a speedy trial, which is to tie them to their deadlines and so that they can meet the burden of proof, which is the government's burden, not the defense burden. Fani's trying to undo that. You feel how disgusting this is? So now she's saying, oh, all of those rules that the defense is trying to invoke, none of those really apply because they have waived them. They've waived their rights under the criminal procedure rules by invoking their constitutional right to a speedy trial. These people want everything, and they want the other side to have nothing. So they say by filing their speedy trial demands, the defense have personally, willfully, and deliberately narrowed numerous options that would otherwise be available to them under Georgia law. All right. So deliberately narrowed numerous options, and they willfully did it. What, are you going to charge them with a crime for this or something? Weirdos. Yeah, well, they filed the motion, so of course it was willful. They typed it up and submitted it. Thanks for letting us know it was done willfully and deliberately, idiots. They signed the motion. Gosh. And so they narrowed the options that would otherwise be available to them. So that means that those options that were available to you, right, you've got to comply with the laws now. That's why they're doing this. Yeah, they would have had a lot more options, but they don't want those options because they don't want you to have the options either. You're now filing to get those options back because they just took them away from you. So they want now those options, basically their rights, to be waived. In connection with any rights under Georgia law, the defense effectively waived any claim to access the state's file information 10 days in advance of the trial. And they cite these garbage cases, which we'll see what the defense does with those. The remedy for the state's failure to comply with the discovery requirements is exclusion of the evidence not disclosed, okay? So this, again, it's why you file for speedy trials. If the state doesn't disclose things, they don't get to use them. That's the point. That's why we go fast, so that we can have the trial before the blood results are back. So she says if the state, she's letting the court know, if we don't get them the discovery in time, if we can show that there's bad faith or prejudice, exclusion is the remedy. The evidence goes away, okay? You cannot use it. This is the tactic. So excluding evidence, Big Fani's now crying. Excluding evidence is a particularly harsh sanction that should be imposed only where there is a showing of both prejudice to the defense and bad faith by the state. So do you see what she's saying? This is reading to me like she's like, we're not going to have some evidence ready. We're going to be skidding in here. And what this means, Judge, is if we can't comply with the rules and the remedy is an exclusion of evidence, well, we know it's going to prejudice the defense, but we're not going to be doing it in bad faith. So please don't preclude the evidence. Please don't keep it away from us because we're not going to be doing it in bad faith. We may violate the rule. It may prejudice the defense, but we did it honestly, you know? So Fani says criminal defendants are obligated to request a continuance to cure any prejudice from the state's failure to comply with the state's discovery statute. I have a hard time believing that, all right? Criminal defendants are obligated to file a certain type of motion. I don't practice law in Georgia. I don't know what major versus state in Georgia appeals court says. I got a real hard time believing that the defense is obligated to request a continuance to cure prejudice from the state's discovery violations. I got a hard time believing that one. That's the whole reason for setting a trial, is to say, get your files in order. I don't think you can do it in time. So in cases like this, Fani is panicking. Where the defense have elected to file a speedy trial demand, Georgia appellate courts approve of trial judges providing defendants with two options. Okay. So they have two options, which is to go to trial without a review of the discovery, or to waive the speedy trial demand and seek a continuance. In Ruff, so that's amazing. So in Ruff, the court stated unequivocally that the defense is obliged to request a continuance to cure any prejudice. We'll see what the defense says about that. In a case involving a defendant's right for a speedy trial, Georgia Supreme Court unanimously affirmed a conviction where the trial court denied the defense continuance request and denied the defendant's motion to exclude all evidence. Okay, but I don't know why this case is on point. Nobody's asking for a continuance. Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro, they're not asking for a continuance. So I don't know why this case is on point. In this case, if the defendants do not seek a continuance or waive their trial demand, they cannot claim any error in going to trial without the evidence. So she's trying to get the court to set them up, in other words, right? So that they can, she's trying to establish the playing field so that the defense is going to have no choice but to file a continuance. Because what I'm expecting is that Fani really wants this to happen. She needs a continuance. So she's going to say, if you don't give us a continuance, you don't get the discovery, and then they're not going to want to go to trial without the discovery. So they're going to try to force a continuance. So she says the defense has barred itself from objecting to the introduction of witness testimony and evidence on the grounds that it lacks due notice. So Fani says the state respectfully requests this court rule in accord with the case law that it require that the defendants personally place upon this record that it is their decision and preference to proceed in this fashion prior to trial. So in other words, drag the defendants in here, make them understand that their lawyers are asking for a speedy trial. And their lawyers, if the speedy trial is granted, they're not going to have the right to get evidence. And what Fani's going to do is obviously withhold the evidence from them, maybe drop it at the last minute, and then proceed to trial in that basis. Or the defense then would not have any evidence, and then they would agree to a continuance. So Big Fani just continues, right? A lot of this is repetitive, but she says, the defense has waived 10 days notice on the similar transaction evidence. So the same waiver that we just talked about apply. Says that the restrictions on the defendant's testimony and their presentation of evidence also apply. She says that they can't use witnesses whose statements were not provided to the state at least 10 days in advance of trial. She gives us some case law there. And she says, once again, in this case, the defense has not sought to date a continuance of any kind, obviously, because they want their trial. As such, by its own election, the defense has determined that it's in its own best interest to proceed to trial without the full benefit of the state's discovery responses. That's not true at all. The defense is going to trial and demanding that you still comply with the rules as they're written. She's just begging for a change of the rules right now. She says there is no defense request for a continuance in order to procure funding for an expert. So accordingly, the state requests this court rule in accord with the case law and saying the defense can't complain about any of these timetable changes. She says, by filing a statutory speedy trial demand, the defendants elected to proceed to trial without the benefit of discovery. In other words, they're going to trial without the evidence. We would have given the evidence to them, but because they're asking for trial, they don't get the evidence. You see what kind of insane country this is becoming? This is a prosecutor who swore an oath to do justice, so-called. Fani Willis and McDonald Wakeford, whoever this person is, Chief Senior Assistant DA. We're going to go to trial without evidence. Similarly, the decision also cost the defense the use to any evidence not timely served upon the state. So they can't use evidence that they don't give to us within the 10-day rules. Okay, so our 10-day rule still is invoked, but we don't even have to give them anything. This also prevents the defense from arguing that they got insufficient notice. And should the defendants in this case desire to proceed to trial, they should have to be dragged into court to confirm personally on the record prior to trial. So they can't complain about it after the fact. So, Your Honor, Fani Willis and her psychopath prosecutors here, who I don't believe have any comportment with justice at all, they say the state requests this honorable court advise the defense of their speedy trial demands, enter a ruling, in this case consistent with this, and basically let us just steamroll the defense. Signed by these people, John W. Will Wooten, and of course, F. McDonald Wakeford. Two people who lie to themselves every morning that they're doing justice in this country. They're absolutely not. They want a trial to go forward without evidence. And, you know, they say they stand up and believe for the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. But then when somebody invokes speedy trial, they say, oh, well, if you invoke speedy trial, that's going to be very harmful to our case. So how about we waive all of the reasons that you would justify a speedy trial request? It's disgusting behavior, but it's out of Big Fani's court, and it's what her office is doing now. And there now is a pattern. She also kept Harris Floyd, a black man, and the leader of Black Voices for Trump in custody without bond. He has just been released, and he came out to appear on with Steve Bannon. And Bannon asks him, were you singled out?
Out. I mean, this is a tough question, but would you think you were singled out because you're an African-American male and they were trying to set an example with you? Is that why you stayed in jail for so many days when everybody else could walk in and do their bond? And I mean, first off, it should have just been recognizant. They should have just let all these folks go. But do you think that you were personally singled out by Fani Willis and others to set an example?
Oh, absolutely. She wanted to send a message to black folks. You know, there's a huge trend amongst African-American men leaning towards President Trump and looking more into conservatism. And, you know, they definitely don't want that. When I went in, the DA's office pulled me aside. They said they wanted to talk about bond. I thought that's when it was going to happen. I said, sure, I'd be happy to talk about it. But I wanted a lawyer present. Then they shut everything down. They put me in front of a judge who said I was a flight risk, which I don't know how that is because President Trump literally flew away. I'm no different than anybody else. President Trump has more, you know, felonies and more jurisdictions. It just didn't make any sense. And also, she increased my bond. Originally, it was supposed to be $50,000. She increased it to $100,000. So I definitely think she was trying to make an example.
Talk to me about this trend. Is this just we're hearing anecdotally, or do you feel there's something really happening here, like a tectonic plate shift with African-American men?
There is a seismic shift. This is going to be the election that's really going to decide the future of our country. If these GOP candidates could be able to speak to African-American men the way President Trump could, I mean, it could do, we wouldn't see, I think, a blue Congress for the next 40 years. But they're just not reaching out. They're not doing it. They're too afraid to do it. But President Trump isn't, and we weren't. And you know that's why I personally feel like I was also singled out. I led Black Voices for Trump, and we raised the minority vote. Our coalition's team more minority votes for any president since Republican president since 1960. So I thought it was a misstep on her part, putting the black guy who raised the black vote for the president in a black jail, but it's all good.
It is all good. They just keep going, man. I don't think they realize how this is all going to backfire on them. I mean, they think they're waging war against their political enemies, and what they're doing is they're just waking everybody up to their disgusting corruption. And more and more people are speaking out. The more people get injured from their corruption, the more people speak out about it, and the more people will wake up. So What is going on there in Fulton County? Who knows, but they might be missing some evidence. There's rumors that there are some problems with evidence that was apparently created against Sidney Powell, saying that maybe the contracts that they said that she signed that were going to be used against her don't exist. And maybe this is why she's hitting the panic button on the speedy trial provision, saying, we'll only be ready if we don't have to give you any evidence that we don't have to use. You know, it's kind of a strange thing. But we're asking ourselves, because Fani's case overlaps a lot with Jack Smith's case, where is all of this evidence? Who's the main puppeteer orchestrating all of this stuff? The J6 committee, an illegally constituted fake committee that was not bipartisan at all, is now apparently accused of deleting or failing to preserve evidence. And this story keeps popping back up. This is from Barry Loudermilk, who's a representative. And here is what he says about the evidence.
So there's no restrictions.
D.C. like these people who come to Washington, D.C. like these people who have never been there before. They're excited. They're taking pictures of everything.
Is it against protocol or rules to take photos in the lower level where they were?
No, not anywhere except for right around the House chambers. That's the only place that there's a restriction.
So there's no restrictions in doing
this
that?
is
No,
about...
absolutely not. People take pictures there all the time. Why doesn't the January 6th committee show the entire video? Because they're taking pictures all up and down the hallway. When the guys near the tunnels going to the Capitol, that's where they hang the artwork that school children give. And at the other end, there is the trolleys, the trains. And the kids wanted to see the trains that take the congressman to the House chambers. That's all this was. And the Capitol Police, they know this. But to the January 6th committee, it doesn't fit the narrative that they want to present to the American people.
So the question is, what happened to all this evidence? He says that the House Select Committee failed to adequately preserve documents, including communications that it had with the Biden White House. They are still missing. That's according to him. The now disbanded so-called fake J6 committee, which was led by Democrats, apparently failed to provide any evidence that it looked into the Capitol Hill security failures on the day of the riots. That's according to Barry Loudermilk. He said his staff has had difficulty gathering all the information it needs. He said part of our task as this oversight subcommittee is to actually address the security failures. You're kidding. Look into how did it happen? How are these folks able to get into the Capitol? Yeah, Stephen Sun would like to know a lot of those same questions. Nothing was indexed. There was no table of contents index. Usually when you conduct this level of investigation, you use a database system. Everything's digitized and indexed. We got nothing like that. We just got raw data. So it took us a long time to go through it. And one thing I started realizing is we don't have anything much at all from the blue team. They never gave it over. We got lots of depositions. We got lots of subpoenas. We've got video and other documents, but we're not seeing anything from the Dems as far as the reports on the investigation they did looking into the actual breach itself. Well, we also realized we don't have videos of all the depositions. He said he's been contacted by a defense attorney that needed access to key information, and the committee realized it did not have the video. Fox News got correspondence between Loudermilk and Thompson's office. The two disagreed about what they preserved and what the rules say. Loudermilk says Thompson's committee was required by law to preserve the data. Thompson said, no, not true. Those are factual errors, and that they turned over, quote, 4 terabytes of data, which is like, that's it? 4 terabytes? I thought this was the most sprawling investigation of all time in America. So they just keep deleting evidence, covering this stuff up, and making up these charges. Congress hopefully will continue to investigate it. But as more people continue to be abused by the system, more people will be speaking out. We know that Fani is starting to panic a little bit, hit the panic button. And when the defense responds to this and calls out this case law and this bizarre interpretation of what she thinks her rights are, we'll be here to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and liking this video wherever it is you're watching it as we continue to cover. All right, so let's carry on. We now have an update on what Congress is doing and how this all relates to Hunter. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States, rejects a subpoena from Congress. Jim Jordan not happy about this. We know Jim is on the Judiciary Committee, and they sent letters over to the FBI and the IRS demanding information. They actually sent more than just letters. They were subpoenas. Sent back August 21st. Merrick Garland just responded to that. We'll take a look at what he said through his office. And James Comer saying, what are we going to do about this? Because there is some concern that maybe these things are just going to continue on without any recourse. But this is the original letter that Jim Jordan sent over from the Committee on the Judiciary. And we read through this previously here, so I'll just hit the highlights. But August 21st, this was to the FBI to Special Agent Sobochinsky, Special Agent in charge at the Baltimore field office. And remember, this was all related to the DOJ's investigation into Hunter Biden. FBI was involved, IRS was involved, various committees said, we want interviews with you. Your department didn't agree, and so we're very unhappy about this. We know you've got public information about Hunter. You were involved with David Weiss at the Baltimore field office. We know the FBI supervisory agent tipped off the Secret Service, and this has never happened before, right? This has been insane. In May 2023, soon as the whistleblowers popped their heads up and started testifying in front of Congress, then they started working out a plea deal. And these people were all on the investigation. David Weiss signed off on the agreement. And the question is, what happened? Why did all of this happen? They say Congress is investigating this. And based on the information, we believe that you have more information that can inform our oversight. We know that you, Mr. FBI, were at the meeting on October 7th when David Weiss was there and said he is not, quote, the deciding official on where to file charges. So, because we've asked for your help multiple times, and because you are not voluntarily complying with us, Jim Jordan said, my friend, please find attached a subpoena compelling your appearance at a deposition. Sincerely, your friend, Jim Jordan. Right? That was the original letter that was sent over. Now, Merrick Garland's DOJ from the Office of the Attorney General, Office of Legislative Affairs, Garland delegated this down to this guy. We know who he is, Carlos Uriarte. Signed off on this letter back over to Congress, and here's what they say. Dear Chairman Jim Jordan, we write in response to your recent correspondence, including your subpoenas to the FBI about David Weiss. They say, you know, our Department of Justice reaffirms our ongoing commitment to good faith negotiations. Give me a break. We welcome the opportunity for continued discussions beyond our prior correspondence and staff level discussions to identify topics, potentially through voluntary testimony, for more appropriate individuals and written responses from the committee. In other words, we'll work another way with you. We welcome an opportunity some other way, but we're not doing the subpoena stuff. They say also, at the close of this matter, Special Counsel Weiss, who just got appointed for whatever reason, is going to prepare a report for the Attorney General explaining everything. The Attorney General has committed, Merrick Garland, to making public as much of that report as possible, consistent with department policy. And so this is the cover-up underway. Like, this is how they're going to cover the whole thing up. Further, in light of the committee's stated interest in potential changes to the statute, contact the tax division and they'll brief you on the next steps. So DOJ says, my staff, Jim, will reach out to your staff today to schedule a call to take place as soon as possible to continue our discussions. Maybe they're going to show up like the FBI did with just like a blank piece of paper and be like, oh, my printer, I thought I printed out the right document. Sorry. We make this offer in good faith. Yeah, I'm sure you do. And in keeping with our continuing commitment to constitutionally mandated accommodations. And we want an opportunity to yield a productive outcome. They must have just been laughing their butts off when they were typing this up. Got to just be like giggling like kids. Hey, tell Congress we want, tell them, no, put this in here, put this in. Tell them we want an opportunity to yield a productive outcome. Just put that in there. Like, oh gosh, that's great. Put that in. Given these opportunities for further discussion, we believe seeking to compel testimony from the FBI is premature, and that's probably not productive. Yeah. As we wrote to the committee at the outset of this, successful compromises are most often possible when both branches hew to the accommodation process. And as I've testified to Congress, Jim, reaching agreement and avoiding conflict should be our shared goal. As we've said before, we respect the scope of the committee's jurisdiction to initiate these inquiries regarding your work. We've already provided info to the committee, and we're going to continue to do so. We remain hopeful that we can reach accommodations. We are committed to safeguarding public interest, but we must also adhere to the executive branch's duty, and our obligation is to protect the government's ability to prosecute. And so in keeping with these principles, Congress, we have long-standing, across administrations, created safeguards about non-public information and internal deliberations. This protects the public and the integrity and the fairness of the investigations. Here we go. These concerns are heightened when a matter is open, like Hunter's is, and investigative steps and prosecutorial decisions and judicial proceedings are ongoing, just like Hunter's is. As Weiss and his office have repeatedly stated, the investigation remains ongoing. We know the public has a strong interest in this, but we have an obligation to protect sensitive information. Here, your subpoenas prohibit the attendance of lawyers by the two employees. And so we can't allow that to happen. So the Department of Justice is telling Congress that your subpoenas lack legal effect and they cannot be enforced. Sorry, Jim. Constitution says your subpoenas are unconstitutional. We're going to throw these in the shredder. Even so, even though you're illegal, the department is eager, I'm sure, to continue providing information to the committee voluntarily, consistent with our obligations and duties. We give respect to your Congress, and we've already given you a bunch of stuff. You know that once this is closed, then you can get stuff. But right now, ethical bars limit what we can say. So, Jim, with respect to your congressional subpoenas dated on August 21st, although it would not be appropriate for the department to discuss the ongoing investigation or answer any questions about this, we welcome the opportunity to discuss topics by providing that information to you. So we're not going to adhere to your subpoenas. We stand ready to have that discussion immediately, and we will reach out to your staff today to schedule a call. So you see how they're never very clear about it? Like with respect to your subpoenas, we're not following them would be a very clear way to write, but they don't. Although it would not be appropriate for personnel to discuss the ongoing investigation or answer any questions, we welcome discussion about the topics by providing information. All right. So we'll kind of like talk to you about it, but your subpoenas are illegal. And so get bent. Give us a phone call. We'll get something scheduled, but we're not going to give you anything. So that is what the executive branch does with their power. Congress keeps sending letters and, hey, well, they sent a subpoena this time. And so Jim Jordan and the Committee on the Judiciary just got snubbed by Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice, and we'll see if they do anything about it. I mean, we know that there was some activity the last time this happened. We know that Christopher Wray got a little bit squirrely over there and decided to show up with a document. I think he just flashed it for a minute, but it was good enough to satisfy Congress. And then eventually, we did get the full FD 1023 because of Chuck Grassley. Don't know how that actually came about, but he released it. So this is what is happening. Congress getting rejected by the executive branch. And are they going to do anything about it? Well, who knows? James Comer says there appears to be a growing consensus within Congress that impeachment is going to be appropriate, or at least an inquiry coming soon.
Yeah, I expect to see Tony Bobulinski in front of an oversight committee hearing very soon. I think he wants to tell his story, and I know the American people want to hear the story. So we're definitely going to hear from Bobulinski very soon. With respect to Sherwin, we've been trying to communicate with Sherwin, but look, Sherwin's going to have to answer for all of these transactions. And where you referenced, Sean, where Hunter Biden was paying for things for Joe Biden, in these accounts, these are the accounts we're now asking for, and these are the accounts we're probably going to head to court in the very near future to try to obtain.
What tools do you have at your disposal to expedite this?
Well, I think there's consensus in our conference now that we're going to have to go to impeachment inquiry. Obviously, that'll be Speaker McCarthy's call, but I feel like we're there now, Sean. I feel like that's imminent. And I believe that that will be a tool in our toolbox when we go to court with our subpoena.
All right. Consensus is building. And of course, the thing we always ask about is timeline and how will this impact the timeline? Impeachment inquiry. How long are they going to kick that can down the road? Play around with that one. Do we ever actually get to an actual impeachment? Are they trying to time that with the next election? Are they trying to time that with Trump's prosecutions? We'll see. But I think that as every single day goes by, my goodness, it's harder and harder to deny it. If you just look at it, it's hard to believe that any Republican is not on this train. So we'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do. All right. And we've got one final segment on the day, my friends. This one is about Hunty Poo. Let's get to it. Hunter Biden likes to get away. Flying around with VP Daddy on his airplane when Joe Biden was the vice president. What was Hunter doing? Going to all of those different countries with his father. Very, very curious. We know he's the smartest man Joe knows. Maybe he was giving him advice over there. But this is a new report from the Congress. James Comer and Byron Donalds are sending a letter over to Catherine Shogan at the National Archives. And they're investigating 15 countries that apparently these two hopped on an airplane and jet set to. We also know that the Department of Justice contacted IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley, who was following this trail. He was following the transactions and watching the Biden crime family, in particular Hunter, be the bag man for Daddy. And when Shapley went up to testify, the DOJ tried to contact him and theoretically tried to dissuade him. We'll take a look at that story. Byron Donald says, hang tight, everybody. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And he was one of the authors of this letter. And so let's take a look at what the Oversight Committee is sending over to the National Archives. And we're very familiar with the National Archives here. That's Deborah Stidel Wall, which was the former archivist of the United States. Now we have the Honorable Colleen Shogan. And Stidel Wall was the one that was in place when Trump was in office and the one really who was at issue in the Florida classified documents case. So this letter is going over to NARA, the head librarian of the entire country, signed off on by James Comer and Byron Donalds, both members of Congress, both on the Oversight Committee. They say, all right, National Archives, and this is the same National Archives that evidently has got 5,400 emails that are heavily redacted that involve Joe Biden's pseudonym, Robert L. Peters and Robin Ware and the others. So Congress now says, okay, dear Shogan, the Committee on Oversight and Accountability is investigating President Biden's meetings and communications with certain family members and their business associates when he was the vice president. Congress is concerned about then VP Biden's role in his family's foreign business ventures and that he may have used his office to enrich his family, of course. For example, recent reporting indicates that Hunter traveled to at least 15 countries with VP Biden. And that's a report over on Fox News from Jessica Chasmar and Cameron Cawthorn. Traveled to at least 15 countries with VP Dad. Messages saying, I can catch a ride with him. The committee also learned that then VP President Biden, Vice President Biden, met with at least one of Hunter's business associates while in Beijing while visiting on official business. So there's yet another key piece of evidence. That's a piece from the transcript from Devin Archer. The National Archives, as the country's head librarian, is the custodian agency of all the vice presidential records, and the committee now seeks information about the use of Air Force Two by Vice President Biden and his family. So that's what they want. They want the records, the flight records. The committee seeks unrestricted special access to Presidential Records Act to certain records related to then VP Biden's foreign travel with his family on Air Force Two and Marine Two. Then VP Biden's misuse of Air Force Two and Marine Two is indicative of yet another way that the president has abused his various offices and wasted taxpayer money for the benefit of his fam. which consisted of nothing more than access to Joe Biden himself. Congress says Devon Archer, a longtime Biden family associate, has stated it is, quote, categorically false that Joe Biden played no role in his son's foreign business dealings. And that was during the Tucker Carlson interview. Flights on Air Force Two around the world to seal business deals are evidence of that role. So the committee seeks additional information about the Biden family's use of Air Force Two and Marine Two. Please provide the following documents to us no later than September 13th. Here's what we want. All documents and communications from the Executive Office of the President, including but not limited to the Office of the VP, regarding certain Biden family members or associates like Hunter, Eric Sherwin, Devon Archer, or Jeffrey Cooper related to flights on Air Force Two, Marine Two from January 2009 to January 2017. All Air Force and Marine manifests from the same time period involving the same names, any flight manifest with these names on them, and all documents or communications related to any security incidents on those same aircraft. Congress says special access to these presidential records may be granted to Congress for matters within their jurisdiction to any committee if the records are needed for the conduct of its business. Furthermore, it says that the PRA subjects the Presidential Records Act, subjects the Vice Presidential Records Act to the same provisions. Congress says the committee's need for these records is well documented. We got to craft legislative solutions, identify legal framework, protect the interests of vice presidents and their families, national security interests, high-profile public figures, and so on. If you need additional information about the committee's legislative purpose containing to this investigation, we direct you to the 3 bank records memoranda that we released this year. And so Congress is referring them to these memos. We did read one of these memos. Actually, we've gone through a couple of these, I think. Just showing all of the transactions. Remember the $83,000 here, $83,000 there, blah, blah, blah. The Committee on Oversight and Accountability has jurisdiction over the National Archives, and so we can investigate you, which is exactly what we're doing. To schedule the delivery of the documents, please give us a phone call and let us know when it's going to happen. Sincerely, your friend Comer and Byron Donalds, 2 members of Congress who have been digging into this for quite some time. So, what were the flights about? What was Hunter doing? Who else was on there? You know, they corroborate and match with official business. Was Joe Biden doing things officially for the United States that Hunter was getting paid for on all 15 of those trips? Who knows? But we do know that when Gary Shapley, the IRS whistleblower, started talking about all of this, the Department of Justice flipped out. So the IRS was following the money, and when Shapley was about to testify in Congress, the DOJ reached out. Here's what they say. Attorneys for senior IRS investigator Gary Shapley revealed a top justice official approached them in April, saying he wanted to investigate Shapley's claims. This person, Associate Deputy Attorney General Bradley Weisenheimer, immediately met with Hunter's lawyer and his Delaware prosecutor, who they say later struck a sweetheart deal, while Shapley and his team were pulled off the case. The lawyer said Weisenheimer appeared first to be eager to get to the bottom of Shapley's allegation. What's going on here? He says, but in just 2 short weeks, Weisenheimer went from expressing an interest in the claims of wrongdoing by the IRS whistleblowers to dismissing the claims of retaliation when the IRS agents were pulled off the case, right? So he comes on, hey, what's going on here? I'm just looking into all of this. And then says that there's nothing that went wrong. The DOJ investigates themselves and finds we did nothing wrong. Lytle says, one of the lawyers, said that after getting information from him, Weisenheimer reportedly had a secret meeting the next day with Weiss and Hunter's lead lawyer, Chris Clark. Gross. Disgusting. So the DOJ lawyers go and meet with the whistleblower and then take everything that they got from the whistleblowers and just deliver it right back over to David Weiss and Hunter's lawyers. And we learned recently that David Weiss worked with Hunter's brother, Beau, which is probably why the Biden DOJ kept him on and kept calling him a Trump-appointed lawyer. then changed his tune with Lytle, telling him everything is going to be handled by Weiss. So Lytle says, I don't even want to be involved anymore. I'm sorry, Weinsheimer. The string of events left Shapley's team feeling DOJ leaders were going behind their backs with sensitive information, because they were. In April, the Wall Street Journal broke the news that senior IRS agent Gary Shapley was planning to come forward. Emails obtained by the Daily Mail and interviews with Shapley's legal team reveal how the DOJ leaders first appeared concerned and eager to investigate the allegations, but then quickly dropped their inquiry. Instead, Shapley and his team were removed, and then they got a sweetheart deal. They said, we got to bury these guys. An April 24th email obtained by the Daily Mail shows an aide for Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, who's probably really running things there, contacted Lytle asking for a call. Lytle says he spoke the next day with Weinsheimer, giving him a general brief of the allegations about the suppression, but he couldn't go into detail. Lytle said Weinsheimer seemed concerned and keen to investigate. He says, I promise I'm going to get Shapley's team legal permission to share the details. But the next day, Weinsheimer went straight to Hunter's lawyer and Chris and told him everything. According to the emails leaked to Politico, Weinsheimer had a meeting with Clark and Weiss on April 26, during which Clark asked for the department to reconsider imminent charges against Hunter. Here's the email from Brad Weinsheimer, Associate Deputy Attorney General. Hey, Mark, whistleblower team. Hope you're doing well. Hoping you might have time for a brief call concerning one of your clients tomorrow. Please let me know if it might work for you. So then that call comes in, and he then turns around and gives everything to Hunter, the same people that the whistleblowers were whistleblowing about. Whole thing's a total scam. They're all in on it. They're all covering up for Hunter. And it's just corruption through and through. Everybody's in on it. It's disgusting. But Byron Donald says, have no fear. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And this representative, the same guy who sent a letter over to Merrick Garland and to the National Archives, rather, is responding.
Surprise, surprise, Joe Biden was violating federal law. So, he did not use his official government email?
Right.
Like, I'm shocked. The reality is that Joe Biden has known all along what his son and his brother were doing because he's been in on it. And when you have emails with aliases, fake names, the purpose is to give yourself plausible deniability. That is what Joe Biden was trying to do. The National Archives needs to release those emails. And I also find it funny that whoever the bureaucrat at the National Archives, they thought that this was the espionage crime of the century, that Donald Trump had classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. But now we find out that Joe Biden had him as vice president. And then we also find out now he had these emails with fake names. And the National Archives is just now letting people know about this. This is the bureaucratic joke that is happening in Washington, D.C. Those emails need to be released. And we're going to get to the bottom of that as well.
All right. So Byron is on the case. And for some reason, it's still not enough. You've got all of the emails, the pseudonyms, you've got the text messages, you've got an entire laptop. You've got Marco Polo and their crew who've done 600 plus pages chronicling 400 plus violations. The list goes on and on and on. But for many people in the media, many people on the left, even these airplane flights, 15 countries, they were probably just sightseeing and honestly talking about the weather. I'm sure of it. So we're going to continue to cover it, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do. All right. Well, that, my friends, is it for us. And I wanted to save a little bit of time so we could get caught up on the super chats from yesterday. And so we're definitely going to go into those and get some reaction from that. But we covered some good ground here today. Hunter flew around with the vice president to 15 countries at least. Merrick Garland rejecting Congress's subpoenas to look into the FBI's malfeasance or involvement, at least, in the Hunter saga. And Big Fani Willis starts to hit the panic button because of the speedy trial request in the Georgia case. All good stuff, my friends, and I appreciate you joining us. Now it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about this and more. And of course, after we're done here, we will go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. And so let's see what we had. Let's start with yesterday. And one more reminder on that. So Garrett Ziegler was here yesterday. If you missed that, Garrett Ziegler, MarcoPoloUSA.org. Really encourage you to go check them out. Support them by getting a copy of that, and they'll ship you a hard copy of it. And it's a great way to support their work. They're currently being sued by the Biden acolytes. And so Garrett Ziegler was here with us yesterday, and we had some people send in some messages, including Dolphin Fan is the man. This was yesterday. And thank you, Dolphin. Dolphin brought in 5 new members yesterday. Big shout out to Dolphin Fan in bringing in Craig V, LS, Lee Sharp, Lee S. We have Rory M, Jerry C, Lamont S, also in the house, courtesy of Dolphin Fan being the man. Thank you, Dolphin. And yesterday we had Deb, 1967, become a member. Welcome, Deb. Dan became a supporter over on YouTube. Welcome, Dan. We got Patrick Parker is bringing in Maury, Angela G, Eball N. Is coming in. And he's dead, Jim, is all coming in, courtesy of Patrick Parker. Thank you, Patrick. And welcome to our newest members. Catherine was here yesterday, says, you're late, sir, making us wait like this. It was, I know, the universe. There's nothing I could do about it, you know. It's just the universe. But we got it done. Crystal says, patience, bigots. Thank you, Crystal. Yeah, we were squeezing it in yesterday. We were on a strict time schedule, so thanks, Crystal, for having our back on that one. We got this one from Patrick Parker. Says, hi, Zillerg, welcome you. Ziegler? Hi, Ziegler, I think. Welcome you. Welcome. Well, thank you, Patrick, for sending that one in. Music Micro Gaming Mix was here. Good to see you, Music. And Common Freeze over on Locals. This was yesterday. Says, I own a copy for posterity. Right. Everybody should have a copy for future posterity. Indeed. We got the Chugi Show. Says, why does anyone believe SCOTUS will do the right thing and overturn any of the convictions? I don't. They have given me no reason to, in my opinion. I agree. Well, so I agree that I don't think the Supreme Court is going to step in and do anything. But certainly some of the charges I do think are, actually I think all the charges are unconstitutional, quite frankly. I think that Trump is protected by free speech for his J6 cases and his executive privileges as the executive of the United States in the J6 case. And on the Dox case, I think that is protected by his opinion clause power and much the same reasons. And you can't charge somebody with obstruction when there's no underlying offense that was criminal. So I think that SCOTUS could theoretically take a look at the law and reverse on those accounts, but they would have to work their way up to the Supreme Court to get there. The Chugi Show. Good to see you, Chugi. Music Micro, another one. Good to see you, Music. Voice says, I'd love to work with Garrett to put together a video series of every step of this if he is willing. Well, you should reach out to him, Voice. You know, send him a message on Telegram, which he's on, and see if, you know, maybe he's interested in that. He's working on a lot of stuff right now, and I'm sure you've got a good vision for it, though. So, sounds great. We've got this one from Niels. Says, when will the book be available in Europe? Good question. Good question. We'll have to ask him that the next time it's around, but I don't have an answer on that one. Hey, so Rocky Water sent this one yesterday. Says, great stuff, Garrett. I've seen a few of your appearances. Always well done. Says, so hopefully Garrett's hearing this. And by the way, when Garrett was here yesterday, I had the screens up, so he was seeing a lot of the stuff that was coming through. But hopefully he's watching. Great stuff, Garrett. I've seen a few of your appearances. Well done. It's a sad sign of the times, but the best compliment I can give these days is you seem very normal and reasonable. Such rare traits. Present company excluded, of course. Keep spreading the truth, brother. Appreciate it. It makes a difference. No doubt about that. No doubt. Garrett is the man, and he's out there really, really in the trenches, grinding hard. So it is a very good comment. Normal and reasonable. It's a rare thing these days, isn't it? Yeah, he uses, like, you know, recognizable pronouns and stuff. Donut Mind Me says, Garrett could be a mighty fine, I don't even know what that is, so we'll just leave that there. Shout out to Diamond Gun in the house. We got A Bad Poet. Says, great show today. I'm waiting for the Pelosi investigation to begin. Cell records, deleted tweets, and of course, attorney-client privilege. Yeah, I'd like to take a look at her stock portfolio too. You know, a little bit of her stock portfolio and see what that's all about. But thank you, A Bad Poet. I think that Pelosi's probably not a real threat, so there's no reason to investigate her. She's kind of, I think exiting public life at some point, or just controlling it behind the scenes like Obama. But I think, Biden's front and center because he's in power right now. And we'll see if that remains to be the case. We'll see. Thanks, A Bad Poet. K Bean says, outstanding interview. Thank you, K Bean, and very generous of you. Thanks for modding down the fort for us while we were interviewing it up. Very much appreciate that. We got A Bad Poet says, Congress investigate the governor attacks on Elon. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so Elon's being sued. Elon is being attacked all over the place. Regulatory type of attacks, I think, with the SEC. And then he's also got this glass house thing, which is just a nuts thing. Yeah, they're going after everybody. They're trying to weaponize every tool they have against their opponents. And Elon owns Twitter, and they don't like that one bit. Music Micros in the house. Thank you, Music. Another one from K-Bean. Marco Polo in the house. Thank you, K-Bean. Yeah, they're doing great work over there. Great work over there. And shout out to Marco Polo. We appreciate them. Rocky Water says, this show is always such a honking breath of fresh air. Thanks, both. Thank you, Rocky. Very generous. Yeah, I love talking to Garrett, man. He's just like an encyclopedia. Just goes. Brilliant. A lot of fun. All right, Jennifer Newman says, love the setup and the interaction. I'm obsessed with your 6 p.m. show. Thanks, Jennifer. Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us and being here. And, what we saw yesterday was basically the rough cut of it. And so what I really want to do is there's multiple camera angles on it. And so yesterday it was hard for me to switch around and stuff, but this was the main camera angle, right? But there's also this camera angle, which is a close-up shot of Garrett. And so we're going to splice it all together, and all the camera feeds record independently, so we can also create some nice shorts and all of that. Like I want to do what we can to amplify all of that brilliance. So I want to cut it into segments. I want to cut it into shorts. So it's even more digestible, and we can just send out those little snippets to everybody. So that's why it's going to be cool to have more people come by in person, because I can get all the angles recorded and do some cool stuff in post. But thank you for that. It's nice feedback. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Jennifer. We got A Boy Misunderstood says, Garrett, thank you for all the hard work and the dedication. I bought a hard copy of your report. How the Bidens are not locked up already is a travesty. Yeah, I mean, they should at least be indicted at least 4 times, right? At least 4 times. Double that. I mean, at least. All right. Thank you, boy. Sedona Rocks says, this headline about Garrett on a CNN article deserves a shout out. Says, former Trump White House aide who met with J6 panel attacks witnesses, lawmakers in profane sexist rant. Shout out to Garrett. Cheers to Garrett for that headline. Yeah, shout out to Garrett. What a great headline. Oh, man. What a great rant. I'm curious what it was. Cheers to Garrett. Yeah, what a headline, man. You can only dream of a headline like that. Profane and sexist rant. So, in other words, accurate and truthful statement. Got it. Incredible. Thank you, Sedona Rocks, for flagging that one for us. We had Rocky Waters says, awesome having you here, Garrett. You're so close to the actors in this absurd play. I feel a bit starstruck. Funny how life plays out. No? Yeah, he's really, really an impressive dude. So we were honored to have him, and we're grateful for his work. Eddie says, does the government really have the capacity to prosecute Hunter with all the Trump indictments going on? He's the real criminal after all. Yeah, it's true. The government has a lot going on right now. They've got, they've got to drain our treasury for foreign wars. They've got to open up the borders to let everybody in. They've got to rig the 2024 election with multiple indictments for Trump. And they've got to keep covering up for the Biden crime family's criminality. So they're busy, man. Prosecuting Hunter, that's a whole nother project for them. They can't handle that. John McGarvey bringing in Dog Backwards. Christine Scorbid Black Dragons coming in. Ooh, we got Randall Williams and Ernie C. coming in courtesy of John McGarvey. Thank you, John. Modding down the fort for us and bringing in new members. Music Micro Gaming Mix. Thank you, Music. We got Venus Valkyrie says, so impressive. Yeah, shout out to Garrett. He is. He's like just a knowledge machine. John says, great show. Now, everyone, please send this video to a normie friend. Good call on that one, John. Yeah. If you're going to share anything like a crash course wake-up call on Biden crime family malfeasance, that's the one. The amount of corruption per minute disclosed, the CPMs, the corruption per minute discussion out of this chart. I don't know. Is there any other video that has higher CPMs than what we have? I don't think so. Thanks, John. We got Rocky Water says the email from Hunter to Archer, where Archer was feeling let down by the family. I thought the language in the email sounded decidedly un-Hunter-ish. Not sure if you know which one I'm referring to, but welcome comment. I do remember that one. Yeah, I think it was a series of text messages, right? Where Hunter was like, don't get down, bro. I know you're being prosecuted. This is what they do to all the great families in America. And just keep hanging on. I remember that email. And you're thinking maybe somebody else was trying to facilitate that conversation. Interesting. We got Don't Be Hatin'. Hey, Don't Be Hatin' says, thank you very much. Says, God bless brave truthers like Garrett and Rob. Well, thank you, Don't Be Hatin'. And God bless you back, man. Thank you for being here and supporting the good work. You know, none of this would be possible without you and your support. So thank you for that. And you're right indeed. And we're praying for Garrett, man. He's literally in the thick of it right now. $60 million lawsuit being brought by Biden acolytes. Eddie Oliver says, hey, serious question. There are photos circulating that show what appears to be Hunter having inappropriate relations with family. Are those accurate? That's a great question, Eddie. We'll have to save that one for the next time. So on this point, Garrett is definitely, open to coming back. We said we'll definitely do this again. So, yeah, I know generally about what you're talking about, Eddie. And there's some interesting not inappropriate pictures, like they're hugging each other at the beach and stuff. And you're like, all right, what else is going on? So I don't know. Eddie, good to see you. Thank you for the nice dono. Curtis says, better times are yet to come. 2024. Thanks, Garrett and Rob and the mods. We love the mods. Shout out to the mods. Better times are coming, my friends. Indeed. Thank you, Curtis. Thanks for being a member and for the lovely, lovely donos. And those, my friends, are what came in yesterday. So thank you very much for those. And shout out to Garrett. And we're going to continue to support him and spread some love over there. So thank you for that. Today, Dolphin fan bringing in 5 new members today. Amazing, Dolphin. Thank you so much. Unknown artist, Yannick G, Trip R, Dolphins Man 1400, Dolphins Man 1400. Oh man, that's going to be different than Dolphin Fan 73. Turn it into a little Dolphin fan club. I love this. Yes, let's get it. Ricky Smith also coming in. Thank you, Ricky. And thank you to Dolphin Fan is the man for bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Dolphin. We got Patrick Parker doing the same. Thank you, Pat. Patrick Parker says T. Oliver, Jim W., Bruce B., Bluntly, Mikey, all coming in courtesy of Patrick Parker in the house. We've got Diamond Gun also became a supporter. Welcome aboard, Diamond Gun. We'll see you. So our members, we do member-only morning streams in the morning, and we do Saturday shows as well. So it's a lot of fun. We hit the headlines. We go through the various stuff that we can't talk about here on the show because there's just so much to get to. And so YouTube members and local supporters, thank you for joining. We've got this one from Greg Cutler, says 5 buckos for the awesome conversation with Garrett yesterday. Awesome show. Thanks for bringing him on. Only Garrett can steal the show and you not be upset about it. Not upset at all. Not upset at all. I wish we had more time. We were supposed to have more time. He had to move his flight up and we were supposed to go for a little bit longer, which was all good. I mean, I told him, let's just make it a thing. Let's just see you back here. No problem. Super easy. And I agree. It's like, man, I could just listen to him just go for hours. He's just like opens the floodgates of knowledge. And it's a very cool thing to watch. And we were talking about it this morning on our locals about how, sitting here in person is I'm sure you guys can see it and feel it. You can feel his energy through the camera, but sitting here, like you can just see his synapses firing. It's like a lightning storm going off. And so I just ask one little question. It's like 35 things get triggered. Bing, 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 bing. And then what you just see is, this brilliant kind of aggregate it all and just dump it out. It's really a cool thing to watch. It's inspiring as heck, man. I'm like, man, I'm energized, hearing him, because that's what we need. We need more people who, are very, very animated and people supporting him. And I'm just grateful for him and his team and the message he's spreading and everybody sharing his message, right? We all play our own roles. So it's very cool. And I just get jazzed about it. Anyways, thank you, Greg. Subster says, does the Keebler elf guy, Garland, oh yeah, Merrick, does he have more power than Congress? Apparently. Yeah, they have more power than everybody, because he's always refusing ordered requests. Either it's still under investigation, I know, it's never-ending investigation, or he simply doesn't want to provide anything. I think it's the latter. He doesn't want to provide anything, and the excuse is it's still under investigation. And that's when it's Merrick Garland. They also use sources and methods, and they also use national security, and they also use personal information, all of those other things as justifications. But we do have co-equal branches of government. And so if you're on Team Democrat, your response is, well, so it's Congress. Tell them to get bent. They don't get to get our records, blah, blah, blah. And there's argument to that, and there's other arguments that this is a corrupt obstruction and they're just trying to cover up their own criminality. I think we know where I fall. Thank you, Subster. I appreciate that one. We got Catherine Rex says, oh, the biggest fanny is looking like a fanny. Sure is. She looks a little bit nervous to me over there. She looks very nervous to me on the filing that we read today. The one that we read today. Catherine Rex says, Rob, you look like you can't stand ignorant prosecutors. And may I say, Big Fani bit off more than she can chew. I thought she was ready. That's what they all said. They said that she was ready to go and she's going to be Trump's worst nightmare and blah, blah, blah. And now she's like, Judge, can you make sure that they know that they can't do this, this, and this, and this, and this, because we don't have any of that? And I can't stand ignorant prosecutors. You're right about that. I can't stand them. They're supposed to stand at a higher level. They're supposed to swear an oath and do honorable things, but they don't. Oh my goodness. What do we have here? Woo! My friends, we have a tremendous gift from Aha in the house. Look at this. Aha. Whoa. Whoa. So that's amazing. So 50 membos, courtesy of Aha in the house. Thank you, Aha. Super generous of you, my friend. And we're just going to be so excited. So our members, we really try to deliver for our members. We do morning streams 6 days a week if we can get to them. And we usually do. We do after parties after the show. Aha, very grateful for you doing this. Thank you. Who's coming in? 50 of them, my friends. Richard, Raven, Steve Lee, Chuck R, Bill C, Damian G, Paul E, Rodney, Alan S, Kalim H, all coming in courtesy of Aha. We got Rachel C, TNV, Amazing Disgrace in the house, Maureen, Alex W, Abby Nelson, Kraken M, Rum B, B Crouch, Johnny Pizzle, and who else? Linda S, John Doodle. We got Mark G, Rabbit Stick, Villainy F, Gemini Gia, Dove Macy, Brandon C, Cameron S, Code Red in the house, Kathy Tratt, Peter Jester, not Robert L. Peters though, Fishfinder, Lao Su, Lil O Me, Russell Ashcroft, Carl Wendell, James McGuire, and we got Dober B, and Kanani, Cindy, 3 girlies in the house, CG, Becky, Florence White, I'll be damned, Alexis Bauman, Akbar, Jesse James, and our last one is Marms. Oh my gosh. Courtesy of Aha in the house. Thank you, Aha. 50 new members, extremely generous. And we're super grateful for all of our new members and Aha for bringing in 50 of them. And so listen, YouTube friends, grab the Telegram link. Okay, navigate over to the community tab section on the YouTube page. Go to Telegram. You're going to see a private members only Telegram link in there. That's where we're going to do our after party after the show. And so once again, Aha, extremely generous. Thank you for doing that. Huge boost, and I very much appreciate it. Pickle Jars for Hillary says Fanny wanted speedy trials until Fanny didn't. She did. She did. She kind of hit the reverse pedal on that one, didn't she? 1R5 over on Rumble says, we need laws against lawfare. Not sure how that would work, though. Way above my pay grade. Yeah, it's a tough one. You know, we used to live in a country where people wouldn't exploit the laws and judges wouldn't indulge this stuff, but we have now crossed that line. And how do you stop political prosecutions? I mean, prosecutors they swear an oath to do justice, and they're just not doing it anymore. And there's a big dog pile on it. So it's a pretty big problem. You know, our judicial system has taken hundreds, if you want to argue maybe thousands of years to develop, and they're just dumping all over it like it's irrelevant. And they're just, you know, 12 million pages of discovery? 7 months, you can be ready. Okay. So I don't know how you fix that, really. I think they're wrecking it. It's one of those things that's hard to fix. Once it's broken, it's hard to fix, but we'll see. Rob's here, says, I wonder if Big Fani was trying to flip him as well. Flip the judge or flip? I'm not sure who exactly she would flip, but she is a big Fani, that is for sure. Good to see you, Rob. Yeah, we've got Code Red, 5 membos. Thank you to Code Red in the house. We got Jackie Kennedy, welcome. Donna J, Garrett B, Amber P, Ranulph de Blondeville is also coming in courtesy of Code Red. Thank you to Code Red in the house. And Tony Hay Munkets also bringing. We're going to have so many new members, man. Tony Hay, thank you. We've got Wanda Lisa, Legit Low Talker, Lone Wolf RCs, the Dejanatronic, and Patriot, We Are Under Siege, all coming in. Thank you to Tony Hay Munkets. Amazing. Thank you, Tony Hay. We got Code Red says, thanks for the gift, Membo. I'm Viva Maga on Locals and Rumble. So Viva Maga is on, we're dual screening it, Viva Maga. I see you over here too. Good to see you. Code Red in the house. Spuds, 5 new members from Spuds. We got PK from AK, Lovely Uni, William H, Doug Onby, and Beverly Wasson, courtesy of Spuds in the house. Thank you to Spuds. And another one from Tony Hay. It's going to be lit tomorrow on our members only stream. Tony Hay is bringing in Matt, Lizzie Breen, Sam M, Wade the Water, Jim Gerard, all coming in courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Man, thank you guys. Super fun. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have YouTube members on our Telegram after party and our members only morning stream in the morning on a lovely Friday. Very awesome. Thanks, everybody. We got Pinot Shay's Helicopter Tours. Says, can Congress withhold government funding and votes until after full compliance with all of the subpoenas? I would demand Obama's, Hillary's, and DOJ's infos too. So the government funding stuff, I mean, like when they pass a budget or appropriations bills or that, you know, that type of stuff, it's both houses. So I don't know that they can just voluntarily withhold stuff. So like the analogy here is what they're doing in, like Rand Paul was holding up, I think, some nominees in the Senate for confirmation, right? So there are things that they can do, like they can dig their heels in. So like, yes, they could dig their heels in and just not agree on government funding. That is true. They could do that. I think I read your question a little bit wrong. Like they could stink up the process long enough that it would become a problem and we'd have a government shutdown or something like that if they wanted to do that. But I don't think they're going to do that. James Comer was asked about something like that and he was kind of, you know, hemming and hawing over it. Nobody wants a shutdown. He got asked that question in the context of would a shutdown stop the Trump prosecutions? Because you could theoretically do that too. What if you just stopped the levers of government in the House of Representatives? Would that defund, would that create a government shutdown and then defund the prosecutions? They said no, because they would consider it to be essential, and prosecuting Trump is essential to them. So they would carry it on. George, praise him, says, can 45th make election fraud case in public filings? So in other words, can Trump? Yes, he could. Yeah. So yeah, there are different vehicles. So for example, he could file a motion to dismiss, and he could say, in his motion that there was a large amount of evidence supporting election fraud, and that justifies his mindset, his mental state, as being truthfully believing that it was fraudulent, and therefore there wasn't a conspiracy to do any of the obstruction stuff. It was just investigations. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of this, I think, in court, in filings. I think we'll see it in public. Yeah, I don't think the protective order would limit any of that. So we'll see more of it. And I think we're going to start seeing some serious filings. Like the pace of this is going to pick up because they set trial for March. So it's going to pick up. Thanks, George. We got Music Micro Gaming Mix says, keep up the great work deciphering these laws for us. Well, thank you, Music, and I appreciate you being here and supporting our work. We're going to keep cranking away, my friend, no doubt about it. Patrick Parker says, go D-backs. Are they playing tonight? Shout out to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Rocky Water says, hell of a show, Rob, once again. I think I missed the morning. This is more valuable than a cup of coffee tip. So much good info and names. I have lots and lots of homework to do. Rock on. Thank you, Rocky Water. Well, I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you being here. This is more valuable than a cup of coffee tip. Thank you. Yeah, we try to assemble it and have some fun. Appreciate that. We got C. John. 5 membos coming in courtesy of C. John, Lucky Lady, Bill M., Matthew L., Janine S., and Jimmy Walker. Thank you to C. John, a member on YouTube, bringing in even more members on YouTube. Thanks, C. John, and welcome aboard, my friends. We've got Adesia says, prayers for Jen and the J6ers, indeed, for all the J6ers, and of course for Jen and our friend Bonnie, who's over on Locals, praying for their family and everybody. Thank you for that, Adesia. We've got this one from, his name is Robert Paulson. I think we should send a copy of that book to Joe Rogan. That's a great idea. Although I think that you got to be careful with Joe. Like Joe, I've heard you don't want to like encourage him to like bring you on. If you like tell him to bring you on, he's like, you're not coming on. So you got to be careful with that, you know. So let's just we got to get the book in Joe's orbit. Yeah, interesting. All right, so it's a good idea though. Yeah, I'd love, dude. I would love to see Garrett Ziegler on Joe Rogan. Could you imagine that? Oh man, 3 hours of Ziegler just doing a brain dump. Oh, it'd be great. A Bad Poet says Pelosi leads the charge to make J6 an insurrection. I think that was kind of her legacy. She really wanted to make that happen, didn't she? From A Bad Poet. Music Micro Gaming Mix became a supporter. Yes, good to see you, Music. We'll see you in the after party and on the members only morning streams. We've got Stephen Mosher. Hey, thanks, Stephen. Says keep up the good work. I appreciate that, Stephen. Thank you for stopping by. Thanks for the generous dono. Thanks for being a member. I really do appreciate you. We've got this one here from S. McG. Says, isn't Congress supposed to have oversight of the government? People have to stand up and respect the Constitution to tell these scumbags to get bent. From S. McG. Yeah, and I think Garrett made a point about that yesterday. Like, what happened? Like, where did all these like tough Congress people? You know, the Democrats send a letter, and if you don't respond to their letter, they raid your house, charge you with obstruction of justice. Congress is like, you know, the Republicans are like, well, they said no. I don't know. We sent them like 3 letters. They said no. What else do you want us to do, America? We're working hard. All right. We've got this one from Mark Millet. Mark Mills. Thank you, Mark. A member for 18 months? That's 2 babies. Really close back to back together. Thank you, Mark. Been a member for 18 months. Says great show yesterday and sends in a very generous dono. Thanks, Mark. Very, very generous of you, and I appreciate you being here. And thanks for being a member for 18 months, my friends. Very, very helpful in helping us do what we need to do. We got S. McG says some Dems have to respect the rule and the process of law. So I'm sure that they do. I'm sure there's many Democrats who have respect for those things, but you have to weigh that on a scale, on a continuum, and you have to weigh that against their hatred of Donald Trump. And for many of them, their hatred is so amplified that they will just forget about the rules and forget about the law. And they don't care. As long as they win, they don't care. Thank you, S. McG. Salty Sarge says, in rowing and boating, a coxswain is the person that is in charge of the steering and the fluidity of the rowing. Also in charge of the crew safety because they can't see what the hell they're going, where the hell they're going. That's good to know. Is that how that was being used in context? I thought it was a different interpretation of that definition of the word. But yeah, I think that is true, right? Coxswain is the person that's in charge of steering. which is Garrett. Yeah, which is Garrett. He's in charge of a lot of steering. And he can see. He's the person in charge. And he keeps things nice and fluid and on the track. No doubt, Salty. Good to see you. Mountain Goddess says, you are my sunshine in a dark world. By the way, you do have great arms. Well, shout out to Mountain Goddess here. Oh, hey, what's going on, Mountain Goddess? How are you? Nice to see you today. You're my sunshine too. All right, anyways, all right, I'll stop creeping. Now, thank you for that nice compliment. I appreciate that. I love Bicep Day. I mean, I can't deny it. Tony Hay says, where is FG? I haven't seen her in the chat for a couple days. Just kind of bugs me. I don't know. I don't know, Tony. I don't know. She hasn't sent me a message. She hasn't let me know where she's at. So I'm not real sure about that one. But if she does let me know, I'll be sure to pass it along. We got Rob's here, says, flip the guy. She was kept in jail overnight with no bail. Oh, Harrison Floyd. I see. Yeah, flip Harrison Floyd. Maybe try to get him to become a state witness. Interesting, Rob. Good question. Hey, yeah, Geegum's here. Hey, look at this. It's Super Ziegler. Looking good, Gare. Looking good, brother. Says, this is from Geegum, our meme smith extraordinaire. Says, what am I doing? Says, tell Garrett, thanks for sharing his info. You guys make a great team, just saying. Yeah, no doubt about it. I think we could make a little nice team. Garrett is Superman. I don't know what I would be. I think Locals has made me the Hulk, which, all right. That sounds fine. All right. So Garrett Ziegler, Superman in the house. We've also got NY Renal MD says all spending bills must originate in the House. So any measure, even changes, can have things attached. Yeah, certainly. But so like when a spending bill actually gets signed, right, it's got to go over to the Senate and then the president signs it into law. But yeah, they could attach whatever they wanted. And I think that they were trying to attach some riders to appropriations that would defund the special counsel's office, like just defund the salaries of the people in charge. But Congress has to have the fortitude to do that. And then they've got to negotiate with the Senate. So it's like, would the Senate agree to defund special counsel? I doubt it. But I get your point. They could certainly put up a much bigger stink about it. We got Kathy Trout in the house. Thank you, Kathy, bringing in 5 new members. We've got Da Freak coming in, Marlene S., Chris 1, Dr. Mimo, and RP Games coming in, courtesy of Kathy T. Thank you, Kathy. Kathy Trout in the house. We've got Pinochet's Helicopter Tours. Says, if they don't shut down, then they are complicit. If you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Pinochet's Helicopter Tours. Good to see you. This is the full one from Garrett. Before it was a bomb. The bomb was corruption. Garrett, however, was faster, stronger, is organized, and has all the goods, including the report on the Biden laptop. MarcoPoloUSA.org. Boom. Love that. Thank you, Jigam. We got this one from Rob over on Rumble. Says, Harrison Floyd, who was denied bail, was Big Fani maybe trying to flip him against Trump, not just to send a message to black people? Yeah. Maybe. Maybe in that case. I think he might have said something about that if that's what she was trying to do there. But she doesn't necessarily have to do it here. She could penalize him, try to freak him out a little bit, see if maybe he'll buckle under the pressure at a later date. Hey, Debbie Marie's here, says, what time on Saturday for V for Vendetta? Great question, Debbie. So our movie night is coming up. You see our movie night. That's going to be taking place at 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is 3 p.m. my time, Pacific time. And so we've already posted some discussion questions for this. Lots of great shows this week, especially from Garrett. Everyone who's new should watch your broadcast, your original broadcast of Garrett's book. Yeah, so we did another one with Garrett. If you haven't seen it, just search Robert Gouveia, Garrett Ziegler, and you should see it from November. And it was a great one. We went for about 2.5 hours, and we did a deep dive on the book itself. So we actually pulled it up on the screen and went through it. And if you missed that, he's so knowledgeable. It's great. So thank you, Debbie. And so we do have let me just share with you some of our V for Vendetta movie questions. We have movie night coming up this Saturday night. And we just posted some discussion questions on our locals. Where did those go? Here they are. Here are some of the things that we're talking about. There were a bunch of characters in V for Vendetta, if you haven't seen it. So who are the modern day equivalents to the film's characters? So who would be the modern day equivalent for Evie, or for the dictator, the Chancellor Sutler? Who would be an equivalent for V? Do we have anybody? I think they try. Well, I don't want to comment too much about it, but there was this guy who was the big bombastic TV show host. Do we have a modern day equivalent of that? I had a question in the show, in the film. The public was waking up all the time. There are different points where people would wake up and get tired of their government. Are there moments now? Is that happening now? Are people waking up? What examples do you think? How about this one? Which agency in modern America most closely resembles the agency or the governing party in the film? Compare and contrast V, the main character, with America's founding fathers. Who does V most resemble in history? The film was released in 2005, but it's set in 2020. In 2023, today, what is the biggest dystopian characteristic portrayed in the film that we see in reality today? And then number 6, use only 2 words to describe V. So see you Saturday. If you want to join us, September 2nd, this weekend, Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern time, to discuss those questions and whatever else you want to talk about. So those are just jumping off points. So we'll hang out, watch the movie on your own time, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it as a community. Locals members, YouTube members, we'll all see you there. Should be fun. We got Salty Sarge over on Rumble, says, Rob, your superhero persona should be from The Tick, Bat Manual. That's great. The Tick. I don't know much about him. He seems pretty powerful, actually. I mean, he's kind of funny and charming and a lot of charisma and all that stuff. I don't know if he's got any superpowers, but amazing. Tree Bark says, shout out to all the members bringing in new members. Gosh, I know. And today was just out of control. I'm so grateful for it. It's like, wow. Thank you to everybody. Major new membos coming in. Very, very cool. So we're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow. Tree Bark says, shout out to all the new members, bringing in the new members. This is a fantastic community. And I couldn't agree with you more, Tree Bark. The best. All right, let's say hello to our friends on the X before we wrap it up for our members only after party, where we'll hang out a little bit longer. Who is here on the X? We've got, how many people are watching? Ooh, 5 people. Ooh, this is getting pretty out of control over here. All right, we've got Danny McWilliams is in the house, says, joys of joys, our justice system at work. I am glad I live in the mountains. You all that live that city better hope Trump wins. If he loses, you're screwed. Laugh all you want, but tell me I'm wrong if you can. Yeah, I remember they were preparing for riots in the event that Trump lost or Trump won. And that would have been, I'm sure, something. Fred says that Willis motion might be the most disgusting motion you've ever read. That comes in from Johnny. It's a pretty gross one. We got James Pepper sharing a YouTube link. Al Holman says, Fanny was used to being the big Fanny in town and now indicted folks who aren't intimidated by your average county DA. Fanny was used to, yes, she likes that. She's kind of her big Fanny reputation. She kind of just waddles it around everywhere she goes, showing everybody her big Fanny reputation. I'm a Fulton County DA. Hey, I'm the biggest Fanny. Hey, she's like, oh gosh, here comes the biggest Fanny. Hey, Spuds is here. Oh man, I'm so busted. Spuds busted me. Rob is wearing the same shirt as he did on March 9th. It's probably true. I'm so embarrassed. It's true. I can't deny it. Beverly says, hey from Twitter. What's up, Beverly? Good to see you. And Raven Madness says, yikes, in the house. Gidget P says the panic is they are truly afraid of what the defense has and they won't be able to counter honest proof. Matt says, killing it tonight. This is hilarious. The accused can only use our evidence. Silicon Valley Reject says, is it possible that Fanny the fanniest of all the big fannies, can't get through the door, her caboose engorged with indictment dreams and fantasies. If you recall, the big chair is so big, it had to be put in the middle of the room, allegedly. It's true. I mean, it's true. For this photograph, look at this thing. It's right there in the middle of the room. It's a big fanny's chair in the middle of the room. All right. And so, my friends, Silicon Valley Reject is over there and some others on Twitter, on the X. Good to see everybody over there. Very funny. Okay. And that is where we are going to leave it. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. YouTube members, join us on the Telegram link. Hopefully you can grab that Telegram link in the community tab section. Otherwise, we'll see you back in the morning for our members only morning stream. Before we wrap up, don't forget about our brand new website, robertgovea.com. If you click over there, you'll see there's this reports section, and the reports section is where you can read about everything that's happening, a nice summary of what is in the video. And so you can check this out. We're working on some additions. We're going to see if we can start adding the PDFs to these reports. Actually, we are going to. We're just going to have to do it. So we're going to start putting the PDFs in here, including the PDFs with my actual notes on them. Okay, so I'm going to save these, and we're going to start integrating them onto the website as soon as we can. So that's all coming, robertgovea.com. Thank you for signing up for our daily newsletter right here. Get the show notes delivered to your inbox every day. We'd love to have you on the website. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is where we are going. Don't forget about our friends at fieldofgreens.com, where you can save 15% off with code Robert at fieldofgreens.com. Also want to shout out our mods and meme smiths who mod down the fort for us, our friends. Vienticus Prime, K Beans in the house. We got Just Cause, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, John McGarvey, Sleepy Dog Lee, Geegum Geegum, and Nathan N810 in the house. And we are grateful for everybody who was able to support us and join us and be a part of everything we're doing here, including the good doctor with one last comment. Says, I think it's a valid point, and I completely understand about impeachment. Every time impeachment was used, the next Congress paid for it in the election. Clinton's impeachment, in hindsight, was spurious. Trump's were, of course, mostly political cover-up. But McCarthy's idea of impeachment inquiry makes a lot of sense. Even give Biden's lawyers a forum to respond. Since a good portion of the population thinks the Biden scandal is only a Republican talking point, only. Yeah, I can see your point, Doc. I think that there's, one of the main benefits of impeachment, of course, is just smearing the other side in the mud. So certainly, I think that the Republicans could impeach Joe Biden, but would the Senate confirm him? Not really. But they hate those labels. I mean, they really hate it. Every time that there's a label or a mislabel or somebody mispronounces a label or whatever, they flip out. And they love saying Trump was impeached. So if their guy gets impeached, it's like, oh, now both sides are impeached. And so what? It's the same labels. So I think it's more of just a political cudgel more than anything useful in terms of removing him. But that's where we're at this point in our governance. Everybody's just blooding each other up for the sport. So that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going to leave it there. Head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. We would love to see you there. But if not, well, we're going to be back here tomorrow. It's going to be a lovely Friday. There's going to be a lot more to get into, and we hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. See you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.